That really didn't happen very much under Justin Trudeau. And I think one question to ask Mr. Carney is, why does he think he can get private sector multiplier effects going when it was so unsuccessful in previous Liberal governments under Mr. Trudeau?
Mark Carney took yet another opportunity to absolutely lie through his teeth, and we'll fact check that one. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Subscribe, follow, like, and comment your thoughts down below. Also, it's no surprise that the Liberals hid their budget for so long. There's one detail in it, though, that many people missed, and it should absolutely floor any Liberal supporter out there. CBC is eating itself alive right now, and it is pretty entertaining, not gonna lie. Anyway, all that and more coming up today on Over Opinionated.
Mr. Carney's $130 billion in new spending promises. To be clear, these promises are above and beyond all of the spending Justin Trudeau had already budgeted for. If you add Justin Trudeau's promised deficits with the new spending from Mark Carney, a fourth Liberal term will add $250 billion of new inflationary debt that will drive up food costs, housing costs, and taxes. You cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. We need a change.
I've been saying this forever. Why exactly is it that Mark Carney would give up his multi-millions of dollars, if even for a short period of time, in order to be the Prime Minister of Canada? It's because he has made his millions by being somebody who affects policies in government that help him and his companies and the people who he serves, which is not the Canadian people. And his budget yesterday absolutely clarified that once and for all. A couple things inside of this new $500 billion deficit that Mark Carney is proposing. We'll just invest more and spend a little bit less. Well, where is he investing, though? Because if you go through some of these lists, he's planning to invest more in additional funding for LGBTQIA plus international assistance programs. He's also wanting to help out Canada's proud tradition of supporting the poorest and most vulnerable in times of crisis by maintaining our international humanitarian assistance budget at no less than $800 million per year. Let's also not forget Mark Carney and how badly he wants the world to go to net zero, not because it's actually going to help anybody, but because it will help his investments, such as, this carbon border adjustment mechanism. This is really honestly just a globalist fantasy. You are wanting to tax imports from countries without carbon taxes. That is straight up an ESG World Economic Forum playbook. But here's the reality. Canada is a trading nation. It doesn't matter how many times Mark Carney says, we're going to need to have these in order to trade with Asia and the EU. No, we don't. We are not an economic superpower where we can afford to do things like this, and it backfires in many ways, including massive retaliatory tariffs from countries like China and also the United States, of which, by the way, are the two largest global trading partners of our country, who do not have measures like this on their own and likely never, ever will. So that is going to hurt Canadian consumers big time. It's going to raise the price on all imports, especially in food and materials. Great. Can't wait for that to happen some more. And it disproportionately hurts Canadian consumers and exporters. And it's all while emissions globally stay the exact same. Because guess what? China and the United States don't care what Ottawa thinks. This is nothing but harmful to us. But he's certainly the one to really make Canada sovereign and an economic superpower, right? Despite the fact that none of his plans outline anything for pipelines, by the way.
Scrapping the consumer carbon tax and calling for Canada to be an energy superpower. How have your views changed on this?
I wouldn't say my views have changed, to be honest. So, I mean, it's very results oriented. So the consumer carbon tax in Canada was responsible for about 6% of our emissions reduction. So 94% of the work was being done elsewhere. Now it sent a signal to households, but it just wasn't that important.
Just a quick heads up, by the way, I was unable to find any public data that actually said 6% of Canada's CO2 emissions were reduced after carbon tax was implemented. But sure, maybe that is a fact, and we'll get some public data at some point. Overall, though, let's factor in again that Canada's emissions are like less than 1.5%, sometimes 2%. It kind of varies in there on a global scale. So 6% of what is already 1.5 to 2%. Wow, that was really worth all of the suffering, wasn't it? But as it is clearly outlined in Mark Carney's plan, international spending, billions for more bureaucracies, and, the government-picked green industries and woke tech startups are absolutely the priority versus Canadian suffering. Let's just hypothesize on what this could actually mean for Mark Carney's motivations. And if you've been paying attention, you've probably already connected some of these dots, but I'll summarize it for you here. This makes perfect sense for Mark Carney because global optics are far more superior than actual Canadian needs. He is very much obsessed with ESG virtue signaling. Also, green industrial complex is quite strong with this one because the budget sets up huge payouts to woke startups, green energy. All of that is linked, allegedly, to all of Mark Carney's network of consulting firms, the WEF, the UN, GFANs, all of that stuff that makes him filthy rich and also makes him feel like he has a lot of control over the world and changing how the world works. If you read his book Values, this would be quite obvious to you. He really does just want exactly what the Liberals and NDP have advocated for all along, which is permanent dependency on the state. The goal of all of this is absolutely not prosperity. It is absolutely control. And given the fact that he and his wife have been actively involved in pushing things so that policies are changed that they benefit from financially so that the government and them have more control, they've been doing that for decades. So this really is not shocking at all.
Bloomberg reports that Mr. Carney has even gone beyond Justin Trudeau, abandoning even the weak fiscal guideposts. And Bloomberg is now predicting worsening fiscal position if the Liberals are reelected to a fourth term. One Carney-friendly economist on Twitter said that this Liberal platform is a, quote, spendorama with even bigger deficits than Freeland's that just go on forever. And he said, I was hoping, and I'm quoting here, I was hoping, this is from a Liberal commentator, I was hoping Carney would pull the Liberals back to the centre with a focus on fiscal discipline. It's not to be. That's a fancy way of saying that Mark Carney's Liberals are even more costly than Justin Trudeau's Liberals. And they're all the same Liberals, the same Liberal ministers, same Liberal advisors, same Liberal promises, same costly Liberal failures.
But do you want to know what is shocking? The fact that this is not even Mark Carney's plan. This is actually Justin Trudeau's plan while Mark Carney was advising him. So it goes to show you how deep those tentacles were tied to everything the Liberal Party was standing for.
You know, the Liberal platform, frankly, that's something I will say that has been ready for several weeks now. Mona Fortier was the one who was working on this, and it was ready before Mark Carney even became Liberal leader. So, he only had to tweak a couple of things.
And they also admitted that this plan does not incorporate any dynamic effects from how these investments impact economic output. Our plan is that it will generate significant growth that in return generates additional revenue and increases the size of the economy, which means that their plan is a guess. And it's a guess based on things that their government has already been doing, based on things that the government in the UK has been doing, and we've seen how that's gone, or even the government in Germany has been doing. And just go ahead and read the news from those regions to see how big of an absolute failure it is.
It's a very liberal budget, if I may say, or platform, in that the deficits in some ways get worse rather than better, and they're already pretty serious. And secondly, it places its reliance on the same thing that Justin Trudeau's government placed its reliance on, which is if we invest so much money publicly, we'll get many multiples of private sector spending to go with it. That really didn't happen very much under Justin Trudeau. And I think one question to ask Mr. Carney is, why does he think he can get private sector multiplier effects going when it was so unsuccessful in previous Liberal governments under Mr. Trudeau?
And with that exact same frame of thinking, which is mirrored, of course, by the NDP, Jagmeet Singh also proposed that the NDP would create a new wealth tax that would generate $94.5 billion to the economy, which they're going to use tax cuts for workers and, to really make our healthcare system so much better. Here's the thing, though, and wow, this really is not rocket science, but as much as it may feel very virtuous, especially if you're somebody who's struggling to say, yeah, stick it to the big guy, those big guys are our employers. Those big guys are who drives our country. And do you want to know what happens when you tax them too much? They do what Mark Carney did, and they have offshore tax havens. They move their money to the Cayman Islands. They relocate their companies. They fire workers. And just like that, jobs are gone, and investment is even more stagnant than it already has been with our current unbelievably high tax system that is unbelievably not lucrative for the vast majority of businesses. And so, sure, it may seem very nice to say this, but you don't build a better country by chasing out the people who are actually creating value in it, no matter how morally superior it makes you feel to really stick it to them.
Cutting the middle class tax cut delivers savings to them now, as do, and this is something the Conservatives either don't get, but they certainly refuse to talk about, is they ignore that childcare literally saves people $10,000 a year in this province. They ignore that dental care saves 8 million Canadians, 800. They ignore that, and they would get rid of all that. And they think. So then all of that comes together because we are very focused on the impacts on Canadians, on people today, while we're building for tomorrow.
It is just beyond me how frequently the Liberals have to smear and lie in order to make the Conservatives look bad. But the truth is out there, and Poilievre didn't vote against these programs or criticize them because he doesn't see the significance in helping people who need it. He did because they were written horribly, and their track record and how they've been implemented across the country and the complaints from all types of professionals who now have to deal with this top-down approach from the government are quite loud.
We will protect these programs, and no one who has them will lose them. And I would note, let's go through them one at a time. We will make sure that nobody loses their dental care. We will also, on child care, we all believe that there should be more affordable child care in this country. The Liberals, though, have imposed a massive top-down bureaucratic system that has actually meant 120,000 fewer kids have daycare spaces than when they first created the program. A third more families are struggling to get childcare spaces.
Or what about another failed Liberal policy? Poilievre was questioned on this one earlier today.
Will you keep in place or repeal the current national freeze on the sale of handguns?
So first of all, let's be clear, handguns are, after the lost Liberal decade, are legal today, legal to own, and easier to get than ever before. In fact, criminals are able to get handguns everywhere they go. In fact, we have more handguns in Canada after the lost Liberal decade than we ever have. The problem, according to the police, the problem is illegal guns coming in from the United States of America. So that's why the police believe with my approach in life sentences for handgun and other firearm traffickers. They believe in securing the border against traffickers, and in mandatory prison sentences for those who use guns in violent crime. The police have said that the current Liberal policies just prevent off-duty police officers and military veterans from practicing their craft without going after the criminals who caused the crime. So my approach will be to lock up the criminals, secure the borders, and stop the crime for a change. And that's the choice in this election. Do we want a fourth Liberal term of crime and chaos, of growing gun crime, or do we want to change with a new Conservative government that will ban all illegal guns, will secure our borders, and lock up the criminals?
Pierre Poilievre is not listening to the activists. He is listening to the people, and legacy media really doesn't like that because it kind of goes against what their plan was. And these regular people with real questions, real concerns, are actually just asking better questions than they are. And clearly this City TV reporter was quite upset by this. I actually used to work for City TV many years ago, like close to 10 years ago now. Anyway, this is just filthy.
I understand that, but we get only a limited amount of questions to ask Mr. Poilievre. Yeah. You're coming here, you have an issue, and I understand how passionate you are and important it is to you personally. Yeah. But you're asking a question that sounds like to a lot of people listening at home that it was planted by the campaign, and you're attacking you're attacking his opponents. Okay, great.
An investigative report, and I hope that you do read it.
I will.
We know for a fact that BC's mental health, the healthcare ministry has delivered to activists millions and millions of dollars funneled there to support what? To support treatment? No, not in your life. To support the proper medication for the severely mentally ill. To provide a bed so that your child isn't sleeping in the woods at night? No, they were not supporting that. They were supporting people who wanted to defund the police, who wanted to deregulate drug use or decriminalize drug use.
Imagine being a legacy media reporter who has the audacity, and this woman, by the way, the reason why she had asked this question is because her son is a success story of treatment, which is something that the Liberal government, they want to just, make everything legal, not improve anything whatsoever. That was her point of view. And the legacy media, instead of listening to the people who have been affected by these policies, decides to go and question her post press conference to accuse her of being a plant because of the question that she asked. Wow, that is such an extreme disconnect, clearly. That's what they think about us, I guess.
You outline almost $130 billion in new spending, but a shrinking deficit over the next 4 years. How and why should Canadians believe your numbers add up?
Well, first off, thanks for the question. The numbers do add up very much. And I'd make a couple of distinctions here. What we're doing is we're taking government spending, which has been growing too fast. It's been growing at 9%, the operating spending, and we're focusing in on that.
Except, as we showed earlier, on their own website, it shows that they have no idea what the impact of all of this new spending will be.
In 2020, I asked the government to stop printing money because I knew it would lead to inflation. It was a big concern of mine because I want people to be able to afford food. And at the same time, Mark Carney was asked the same question. He said that he laughed off the concern. He said it's unlikely to materialize to a serious extent. Less than 6 months later, we saw inflation skyrocket. Inflation then went out of control, and Mr. Carney went on to a new message. He said that not only was he not worried about the rising inflation, but that it would be a good scenario. He said that inflation would be good for the economy. It would help progress the economic situation. Well, it did for him. In fact, Brookfield made more profits because of inflation. They could charge more rent and higher prices to customers, and that meant great profits for them. He continues to own shares in Brookfield, which means he profits when inflation goes up.
I mean, part of the issue here, Lisa Reid, is for instance, the tax cut that the Conservative Party is putting on the table. It's bigger than the Liberals. We don't know how that's going to get paid for. One of the things Mr. Poilievre has said, Catherine Cullen brought it up in the last hour, is he's going to cut foreign aid. We don't actually understand where that's going to get cut either. So there are parts of this that need to be understood, I think, for people if they're going to choose Mr. Poilievre.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Rosemary. And to be honest, with all due respect to my friend, I'm going to say that, it's great to see the platform of the Liberals, but they had 10 years to do all of that, and they didn't. And they said they were going to do that before. So why would you think a fourth term is going to be that one term that's going to allow them to go ahead and do it? Right. And I think that's just what people have to consider as they go forward. As for the cuts, to answer your question directly, I think everyone would agree that what we've seen in terms of government growth in the past 10 years has been excessive, and that it is something that definitely needs to be taken a look at. And we've heard various finance ministers from the Liberals saying that they have to do that. And there's nothing different from what Pierre is saying, except perhaps Pierre would be the one to execute it.
The most outrageous thing about all of this, though, is the fact that Mark Carney admits all of this while then presenting a budget that is more of a deficit than what Justin Trudeau ever presented.
Because the government has been spending too much and Canada has been investing too little. Let me draw that out. Day-to-day government spending, the government's operating budget, has been growing by 9% every year for years. That's more than twice the rate of growth of our economy.
And my, oh my, I cannot wait to dig deeper into the reality, the hypocrisy of what the Liberals are proposing and the lies that they are telling Canadians in order to get your vote. Make sure, if you don't already have them turned on, that the notification bell is on here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and follow. There is something coming your way that it's going to be a really good one. I can tell you that much. I'm actually going to be out of town for the next 2 days, so we won't have a regular upload like this type of a breakdown, especially not tomorrow and most likely not on Tuesday either. But I do have an interview dropping tomorrow morning with Michel Maisonneuve, who is a very well-decorated former member of the armed forces. He's written a book. He writes in the National Post. So that is going to be uploaded for you tomorrow morning. And then just stay tuned. Stay tuned. Big things are happening here on Over Opinionated, and I cannot wait for you to see them. I'm Jasmine Lane. Subscribe, as I said, follow, like, and comment your thoughts down below. And I will talk to you very, very soon.